Deconverted Man here. I've got SomeAccountMan, or just some account, whatever you want to call him. SA for short. SA. That sounds it sounds racially charged.
I am Hispanic, so you're close enough.
Oh, okay. Hey, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. All right, great. So we're gonna be talking about God and stuff. He's a theist of some sort, and so say hi.
How's it going?
All right.
I'm a Roman Catholic, if you want me to be specific, I guess.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I got
Well, why don't you
your show,
stay?
man.
You gotta stay in place long enough for us to talk.
Oh, okay, Roman. Okay,
Roman, you're
clever.
oh
I
yeah,
appreciate
that was
that.
that's it. Did you hear about the one about the no? Those aren't buoys. Anyway, so a priest, rabbi, and a Jew are arguing about how to divvy up the tithe money, and the Jew says, well, we'll give some of it to the poor, and the rabbi, or well, I guess the rabbi is the Jew, so I screwed this joke up, but that's okay. The other guy says, no, we'll give half to the church, half to the poor. The Catholic says, no. Here's what we'll do: we'll throw the money in the air. Whatever God wants, He keeps. So you can make that about any three people. It's an old one. Anyways,
appreciate it.
Yeah. And I told it wrong, but you can see it done correctly in Short Circuit movie. Yeah, so that's a flashback to the 80s. Anyway, so let's talk about beliefs and God and such. So, what's your kind of like abbreviated reason that you are in this religion, or that you believe in this particular God, or anything like that? Is there one thing, or is it just you were born into it, or what's your story in short?
I mean, it was a couple of things. I have to say, I was born Catholic. Kind of walked away from the faith for a while, in high school, but I came back to it. I found the philosophical arguments for God convincing, and was drawn back to the faith that way, I guess. For a quick and dirty summary.
Oh yeah, that's pretty quick and dirty. So the philosophical arguments, what would those be off the top of your head, or do you know any more?
Well, I mean, St. Thomas Aquinas' arguments for God, St. Augustine's, Plotinus's, Aristotle's, Plato's, I would say all of these, to some degree, definitely inspired my return back to the faith, so to speak.
With one thing I've come to almost expect from many Catholics is that a lot of them approach their faith from sort of an intellectual angle, even though that to a skeptic or an atheist that seems the opposite, because we're like, oh, there's no God, come on, stop being silly. But there is an intellectual way to go about it. Whether or not I agree with the arguments is a side matter to that. But for the Catholics I've known and met, many of them read lots of books and did a lot of studying before coming to the faith or joining the faith or anything like that. Is your journey sort of like that, or was that encouraged by any pastor or preacher or whatever the bleep you guys call them? I can't keep up anymore.
well, we basically just use priest, but
priest. Yeah.
It actually, well, as a kid, they never really during my Catholic education, they didn't emphasize too much. I guess we would call it scholastic defenses of the faith.
Wow.
So it was something it was something I came to later in life that I don't want to say stumbled upon it, but it was something that I wasn't brought up with it originally. It's something I found later in life.
So is this Orthodox, or is it more modern, or what flavor, I guess?
I guess I would just say Roman Catholic. I don't know if I'd put anything else on top of that.
Okay. And now that was what you had growing up as well, or
Yeah, that was also the same uh religion. Yeah, Roman Catholic.
And what's up with
I already said I'm Hispanic, so of course I'm
yeah,
going Catholic.
yeah? There's a lot of history with Mexico and Catholics, and of course Spanish people and Catholicism, essentially because the Christians came in and took over and just said, "Hey, you can convert or die." So I guess a lot of people were like, "I guess we'll convert or pretend to," and then I mean, if you can only practice your actual religion in private, it gets awfully hard to maintain. So after a while, it just became Catholicism by default.
Well, I'm actually not. I'm not Mexican.
No, but I mean,
But it,
yeah.
yeah, most of my family either. Well, some actually were recent. They came over from Spain later, but from my grandfather's side, it's mainly a lot of Indian blood in there too.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about Mexico, not to stereotype you into one area or anything, but that the history of how they got Catholicism essentially was, Christian crusades and whatnot. And a lot of, well, I mean, that's a lot of how people, became Catholic or Christian was because of various conquests of their whatever religions that they happen to have kind of went bye bye in favor of Catholicism or Christianity later. Um, I mean, there's a thing we gotta kind of say something about, otherwise I'd be a remiss in doing so. What's your how is it that you what's the sort of moral ethical feeling of, is there a justification or anything like that, or any thoughts about the Catholic Church as a whole regarding the whole, you know, scandals that are going on, let's say?
Oh, I hope all of those priests get brought to justice, and whoever they have to arrest, they have to arrest. I don't want there to be any pedophiles in my church.
Yeah, well,
I'm told whoever got arrested, just
definitely,
go ahead.
definitely. Well, and a lot of the people had, if you knew that your donation was going to help that, of course you would stop donating. So there needs to be, is there some sort of, is there a huge pressure being put on to the organization by its members to be transparent about that stuff, or are
It
you
depends.
even involved in any of that, or
Well, it depends on the area. I've heard different things from. Well, most of the recent things were from. Actually, technically, it wasn't recent. Happened a decade ago. But the
yeah,
stuff that recently came out
yeah, there
was
was more stuff that
yeah.
came out
It was
because there
Phil.
was a
It's from
big thing
Phil.
at,
Yeah, it was from Philly and other parts of Pennsylvania. I don't live there, so they wasn't. It's not as. It wasn't brought up as much by me. But I know that there were people that were withholding their donations in a concerted effort to get a better reform in that area, and they're already making changes right now. I know that they're
mm,
redrawing what's it called, uh diocese lines, which is basically the territory for each church. To quickly
yeah,
summarize that, I guess. They are making they're trying to make changes in the places that are affected the most right now.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's kind of weird because the Catholic Church uh, is a political entity in and of itself, and the main church actually is a state to some degree, so they have a
I,
lot of power.
I do disagree that it is a. I think that
Or
they're not the
nation,
same. Yeah, the
yeah,
Vatican
it's like
City, the place.
Vatican City is like a,
Yeah, but it's not the same as the church. They're two separate things.
okay, all right, yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, because I know some of it, but a lot of it's been lost to memory because I haven't looked at that in a long time, because mainly I'm used to Christian Protestants rather than and it's funny because the word Christian applies to both, but it's come to kind of be in the common lexicon that Protestant equal Christian and Catholic's like its own thing, even though that's not how
it's a very American thing.
Yeah.
Catholics are kind of, they weren't they weren't new to America, but a lot of the major Catholic populations came in around like the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah. Well, my first church that I started out in along my road as a Christian before I eventually deconverted when I was older, 32, which was only last week. I'm not any older now. Blah, blah, yeah. Anyways, no, I'm very older now.
Happy birthday, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. I was 18. I mean, yeah, that's get younger every time. But that was Lutheran. So we had the one of the creeds, I think, from Catholicism carried over. I can't remember.
Oh, it's the Nicene Creed.
The Nicene Creed, yeah.
Yeah, actually, what's funny about that is most Christian denominations do not even consider you Christian if you reject the Nicene Creed.
Yeah, and then of course, but Lutheran being the first offshoot of Protestant, because I mean, well, named after the guy that did the whole thing on the door and all that. He caused a little bit of problems there.
Yeah, just a few problems.
Yeah. How much do you know of the history of the church or anything like that? Like, for example, how hard it was to get the Bible translated into English, and how the early church went about not allowing that to happen. Do you know anything about that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I know about that. I partially agree with that. Partially agree with it.
How's that?
Well, in Catholicism, we don't view that like that each individual comes up with their own interpretation of the Bible. The Bible is set up from tradition, and then it has to be interpreted in light of tradition. If it's not, then you're going to be interpreting it wrong, and that's our major disagreement with Protestants to begin with. However, as the middle class rose in over time, I mean, it wasn't just lords ruling over their peasants. There was, of course, going to be increased literacy, so people were going to want to have the Bible themselves. So,
I meant that the Catholic Church was engaged in putting a lot of people to the torch, and killing them in that way. And there was this one particular person that even after they had burned him at the stake later on, because his influence of spreading the Bible and being translated was so far spread, they were so angry at him that they dug up his bones and burned his bones. I'm like, guys, he's dead. You can't kill him.
You just gotta make sure you don't want zombies or anything.
Well, no, actually, there's a reason for the burning of the bones, and actually ties in with a Jewish belief regarding the bones, the bone marrow specifically, that is the essence of your soul. So if that's destroyed, you can't come back when the Messiah comes. So I'm not
Catholics have never believed that. That's anathema to.
So I'm not sure why they burned the guy's bones, but it might have been. I have no idea from that. I don't know, but at any rate, I was like, a lot of people died to get that thing translated. There is the Catholic Church is the only way to salvation sort of motif that I don't think is heard as much as it was before, but you kind of touched on that a little bit with the, you have to have tradition and you have to have this. So is that sort of a saying that you agree with to some extent? Or
yeah, I would say that there's no salvation outside of the church. However, we don't view like other Christians completely outside of the church. They are professing heresy, and they are in mortal danger of their souls, but they're still part of the church to some degree.
Interesting. So, but everybody that's not Christian is pretty much screwed, yeah?
It depends. It's also culpability. So, like, if if it's reasonable for you to have it's basically, can you be held responsible for what you did? I think that would be the best way to put it.
So is it sort of leaning? And I don't know if you know. I mean, it sounds a little bit like universalism in a sense.
No, it's definitely not that. There are, if you rejecting Christ, you will go to hell for that. That's true.
So what's the difference between rejecting Christ and not believing in Christ?
Well, if someone's like incapable, or I don't know, I wouldn't be the best person to describe this, but if someone is for reasons that they can't control, unable to come to the faith, then maybe God could offer them salvation. But that don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath on that stuff. Sorry, man. Just give me a quick heads up on that.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. You know, it's all good. I don't care. You know, it doesn't bother me. I just want to know what your views are and try to get some reading on, you know, where you are in that and why. So, kind of covered some of the why, the arguments. Have you studied formal or informal logic?
Like like in school, no,
At all.
I guess to some degree, sure.
Yeah,
I know how to structure like an argument,
like a syllogism, because the lot of the arguments take syllogistic format that you know that you mentioned, Aquinas and you know, all that. All these arguments have been rebutted in various different ways. Have you looked at any of those, or if you have, what do you make of those sort of rebuttals?
Well, most of them are complete misrepresentations of what the original argument is. Like, I mean, even like the most famous ones, like David Hume, like he just doesn't understand causation or what Thomas Aquinas means by it. Or I mean, even what's it called? This guy was Catholic, but not my favorite Catholic, William of Ockham. He denies universals, but obviously universals are real, and there's plenty of arguments for universals. So like I think he just misunderstands what universals are, or like or for the most part, it's misunderstanding the arguments. That's a big problem.
Well, you said universals. Are you talking about universals like triangle is a universal, or are you talking about a different?
Yeah, like basically like when we say things like, "Oh, hey, that's a triangle," like that's a meaningful statement.
Right. It's you can't who is it that I can't think of his name now, but the philosopher that I read on this, you can't picture a triangle in your head. You can't draw it. You can only draw particular triangles. Universal can only be expressed. The word triangle is the universal, but you can't draw it because every time you draw it would be a particular type of triangle.
That's a misunderstanding of universal. By universal, it would mean that like there's an attribute that all triangles share. Like not that all triangles share, but that defines triangularity. Like there's never going to be a triangle that's going to have more than half the like if a circle has 360-degree angle, 360 degrees to it, a triangle is going to have half that every time.
Yeah, Morton Adler, that was the name I was trying to pull out of my brain. He talked about universals and particulars, and as I came to understand it, was the universal is the kind of the concept that there's something in common with all cars, there's something in common with all cats, people, etc. But these things are the universal, and that if you try, you couldn't draw a car because you could only draw a particular type of car. The moment you started to draw it, it would stop being a universal because the
Well, no,
concept.
like, have you ever done programming like before, like computer
Yeah,
programming? So,
yeah,
like, you know how like this class and object.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so like the particular is the object and the universal is the class.
Yeah, well,
That's
that's what I'm getting at.
but
I
so yeah,
think it's just a
so
different way.
Willie Markham basically said there's no such thing as the class doesn't exist.
Mm.
It's just a bunch of random objects, and that's nominalism, and that's ridiculous.
I had an argument that I was going to try to formulate about God and trying to figure out if God was a universal or a particular, and if it was a universal, then it could only exist in the mind because you can't jot down a universal. So, but I was like, well, but no, but people have particular versions of God, so that argument doesn't really work.
Well, I mean, like God is that which, like, in Greek philosophy, be called logos, which is reality, which would contain all universals.
Or the word.
Yeah, same thing. But it's essentially just means that he would contain all universals.
Yeah, but then it's still a particular because it's a certain way of viewing that concept, that idea. So you can't, unless, well, I don't know. What is God? Of course, it's what.
Well, in the Catholic faith, to do it in justice, but to sum it up as quickly as possible, we view that God as being itself, and
Yeah,
that every view of God from that is analogous, but it's an extension of that.
yeah. Because I've asked questions like, "What's God made out of?" And I think the answer I got one time was, "God's made out of God," and I wasn't very satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Like, no, I mean, it's got to be, how does it work? How do you have a mind that doesn't have a brain? How does that work? What's its power source? All these sort of questions that don't have answers because whoever, came up with this stuff didn't bother to come up with those sort of answers.
Well, I mean, like God wouldn't be made out of anything because he wouldn't be a physical thing.
Right, but then it kind of, see, that's a problem because then what is not physical? What does that even mean? Because
well, in this case, it would mean existence thing, not a particular thing that exists, but the thing that allows anything to exist.
But are you placing it outside of reality? Because it
No.
have,
it would be reality is basically it.
What does that mean? It's one of those things that I can't really make any sort of a logical step to that. I just, it's something you have to work backwards from to get any sort of argument, which is what Aquinas and others have tried to do. Now you say the the five proofs, for example, you said that the people are getting it wrong. So do you have that offhand, and how is the proper way to view it? Can you outline that, or
which one of his arguments? I mean, that wasn't the one I was planning.
Oh, okay. Well, whichever
I
one
was actually planning on presenting basically St. Augustine's argument.
Okay. Yeah. However, whatever one you want to give. If you have a thing that you want to read from or whatever, I can get that up here.
I can quickly like sum it up, probably in like 4.
Well, I don't. Yeah. Okay. But I'm gonna want to make sure that.
I mean, if there's a question, I can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead then.
So basically, the first point is that universals do exist. When we're talking about universal, we're actually talking about a real thing. Universals aren't dependent on any contingent mind. They exist. Like, for example, if all humans disappeared one day, the laws governing triangularity and what it means to be a triangle would still exist. That's one. So premise 2 is these things, because they are able to be contained in the mind, are mental objects. Premise 3, because these universals are mental objects, but are not contingent in a what's it called, in any particular, they're not dependent on any particular contingent mind. They must be contained somewhere else that isn't in a contingent mind. So premise 4 would be, since they're not contained in a contingent mind, they have to be contained in a necessary mind. This would be the divine mind, or what we would call God.
I'm gonna have to see that written down because I can't take notes.
Yeah,
Like,
if you want
I was
go
like,
real.
universals exist, mental objects exist. But I was like, yeah, sure. What's this? This is which one is this here?
It's St. Augustine's. I don't remember what book he. I don't want to say wrote it down, and when he gave the art, it's not even specifically an argument. It's just so. But his opinion was that God was self-evident, that this was just another way to illuminate, to bring illumination to that. I'm going to give a really rough summary in the chat log. If you want to post it somewhere or anything afterwards, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm trying to see if there's a particular laid out syllogism like you gave here at all, or no, that's not it. This isn't in one of his typical arguments then. Is this the 5 ways guy, or is that the other guy?
Nope, this St. Thomas Aquinas was the one that.
Yeah.
5 ways, yeah.
I always get these two confused. It's one of those saint guys. Ontological. Is this the ontological?
No, that was Saint Anselm.
Oh yeah.
You're close. You split the difference.
Yeah.
You're almost there.
Hey, look, there's all these saints. I can't. Okay, universal exists. These things are mental objects. The universals. Okay.
Hold on. I only have 2 more points. I mean, 2 more points.
Yeah.
My spelling is atrocious lately.
Don't worry.
I haven't slept in like I don't even know how. Probably since Sunday night, I guess.
Doesn't matter. Spelling words, whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't know how to say words. I can't spell words. It's all good. Okay.
This is sorry. This is basically a I would say, I don't want to say overly simplified, but simplified version of the argument. And if you need me to expand on any of the 4 points, I will, obviously.
Well, universals are concepts that exist in the brain. This is kind of the thing where there's some sort of disconnect, because you can get into this thing of, the number 1 is a mental construct. It's a construct of the mind. If mind stop existing, then the number 1 ceases to be, but the math would still work. It's just nobody would be around to make it work.
Yeah, but so you're saying that the math would work even if there's nobody around.
If the universe is exactly the same with or without people, and since it's been around for quite some time without people, I would think that the universe works just fine without us. However many, let's see, 13 billion years were 4.54 billion years old. So 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. So about 9 billion years, the universe went just fine without us around, without even the Earth around, let alone humans, because humans didn't appear until far later in the Earth. So it seemed that that things worked just fine without us to be around to notice anything. But as far as the concept would not be there, because no one to conceive of it. There's no consciousness. Well, there might be some aliens, but we're going to ignore that for now and say that there isn't any consciousness to say number one or the letter A or whatever. So
well, I'm not talking about the symbol. I'm talking about like its inherent meaning.
yeah,
Like
it
for
has
example, like
no.
as a universal, but like there's no I don't numbers. It's hard to do just because like you could use.
Yeah,
I think I'll use shapes for a better one. There's no triangle
yeah, no.
whose interior angles what's it called, equal more than the interior angles of a square. Like that's
Yeah.
not possible.
Well,
So
yeah.
these are so it's a
Yeah.
universal thing.
Right, but those things again, they whatever would be true in the universe without sentient beings to realize that things are true would still be true without those sentient beings.
Yes,
That
yes,
if
yes.
we all vanish tomorrow, the world goes on fine just without us.
And these laws, like the fact that the interior angles of a triangle and
Yeah,
never work,
whatever. Yeah,
they
and now
they still exist, right?
of course, you have the question of, of course, because the laws of logic are similar in the sense that we map them to the reality that we understand, and if we further our understanding of reality, then that might change how we view some logical laws, although it's doubtful, but it's hypothetically possible,
Well, no, at that point, then we couldn't understand anything because if we can't trust logic, then
No, well,
there's no reason. If there's no
if
reason to
we
trust it, then
if we
you can't have
understood
an argument.
if we understood reality better tomorrow than we do today, it is hypothetically possible that we would have new logical fallacies, remove existing ones, or even possibly the laws of logic might have to be reworded to fit our better understanding, because we do the same thing in other sciences. Now, I don't think that there would be such a thing, but and that we would be able to survive it. But if it did happen and we did survive, then we would update it. Otherwise, we'd be dishonest. And we'd of course have to go back to the drawing board to relearn logic at that point. But it's pretty hypothetical, so it's not really it's not really something I worry about or anything. Of course, you have non-classical logic and people who advocate for that, but I'm not too much of a fan of that per se. But it's interesting to know about. With the universe as a whole, though, when you rewind it far enough backwards, you have a problem that that our understanding of how things works begins to break down. And so if we say the laws of logic or anything else for that matter map to reality, and reality itself is weird and we can't quite understand it, then how do we know what's going on? How can we map anything at that point? How can we say anything about triangles? Because it's just this huge boiling mess of heat at this point. So we get to the.
I understand that, but basically, there's only two options in this basic scenario. Either the universe is intelligible, as in we can know it through rational means, or it's not.
Well,
if it's intelligible, then we have to assume that the laws of logic are true. If it's not intelligible, then we don't, and you also can never have another conversation.
See, I think that's
an argument is what I meant.
I think that's a false dichotomy in a sense, because when you go back to the Planck T1 event, let's say, where the universe is super small and super hot, and the only thing around is some particles of heat or whatever the bleep's going on in the very Planck time. Of course, I don't know how we're there to observe it, but somehow we're observing it, and although that those things that are going on, whatever that is, we don't have any idea how any of that works right now. Maybe we would if we could look at it and watch it, then we could figure it out. But I would make the argument that because we can't know what that universe is like, that we don't know what to map logic to, because that's a very different type of universe than the one we have now.
Yeah, that's fine, but my point still stands. It's technically it is the same universe. We're still talking about the if we're
No, it's very different here.
But all right. When I say universe, I don't mean like a physical place. I just mean all of reality.
That's well,
I mean all of reality when I'm saying
well, I
universe.
don't know. Well, I don't know. I think, well, as far as I know, reality is the universe.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So is the universe intelligible? Is reality intelligible? It's a yes or no question.
Well, no, because there could be a time when it's so weird to us that it would stop being intelligible.
All right. Well, then in that case, we can't have there can't be an argument.
No, only in that time. You move past that time, and after that time, then it becomes intelligible.
So it becomes all right. So right now it's intelligible, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So right now,
Right now, yes. But I'm
all right,
saying that
so
when
that's
you go
fine.
back, if you rewind back far enough, you get into this potential. Now, I'm not saying that this is the way it is. I'm saying that I'm leaving a possibility open because scientists and everybody that's smarter than me is like, we don't know what's going on. We get to this point, we go, stuff is going on, and our math fails because, well, physics, we don't know how it would work. And I'm like, well, then how could I possibly, because I think that logic maps to reality. Now, of course, the theist might say that logic maps to God or something like that.
Well, I would say it would be that logic maps to reality, obviously, but I would say God is the logic, is what
Yeah.
is generally what we say.
Yeah, well,
So
there's
my my point is, if the universe is intelligible, then do all four of my points still stand? If they
um
don't, it's either they stand or they don't stand.
well, see, again, it's you're doing excluded middles where there's sometimes they stand and sometimes they don't. Like universals exist. Well, in the brain, sure. But other than the brain, in what meaningful way does this thing exist apart from just saying that the way the universe works is the way that it works? Sure, okay. The universe doesn't need me to know that it's working to keep working. So I'm tentatively granting that universals exist, but in the mind. And
Well,
without the mind, the
oh,
rules are still there, but so what?
well, no, the rules aren't there if they only exist in the mind. Because if they exist in the mind, then they're subjective to the mind. As in, we should be able to change the. Well, then why can't we change the rules?
Because the rule is what we observe to be the case. Now, we could be slightly wrong or off about that, and hopefully we're not. But it's like, okay, well, that's the way it seems to work, and it keeps working that way, so we're okay with that. But we don't need to be aware of it for it to still work in that way. We don't see this is making the thing dependent upon a mind to exist. That's P3. No, it doesn't need a mind to exist. It exists whether or not there's a mind or not.
No, what I mean is all right. So we have to get to point two first, but we're stuck on point one. The point
No,
one.
I'm tentatively granting
All right,
one and two.
Well, point one. All right, so fine.
But I'm just saying one and two are the same premise. I'm saying
No,
that universals exist as mental objects.
no, but universal exists is what is my first premise. Is that they exist even outside, even without minds to, even
okay,
without
then
that
that has to be clarified or argued for in a separate argument then, because the only way for a mental construct, which is what a universal is, you're separating it from the mental construct and you're saying the rule is there, right? Am I getting that right? Or
yeah, I'm saying that the rule would apply even without humans there to quote unquote make the rule.
Okay, then it could be rephrased then, but
yeah, I was just
regardless,
summarizing
yeah,
a point.
regardless, because then it's a little bit, you get away from the whole universal problems and what we mean by exist and in what way and all that. So, okay, the rules of how things work would still be with or without minds. Sure.
Yeah, all right, then yes. All right, so but they are still like you can still they're still contained in mind. As in you can understand the rules of triangularity but you can't, like, let's just for example, think of a triangle right now.
Yeah, it'd have to be.
Can you weigh that triangle?
No,
Can you measure the length? All
no,
right, so
because
it's not a,
it's a construct of
yeah,
the
so
mind.
it's not a physical object.
No, it is a physical object.
The triangle is a physical object.
Well, okay.
The triangle that you're thinking of right now.
The thoughts are constrained to the physical brain to some degree.
Well, you're making the assumption that the brain is that the mind and the brain are the same thing, which
They are.
They aren't, but that's not
They
it's
are.
not
They
it's not an
absolutely
argument either.
are.
No, there's no, you have, that's a separate argument.
Well, that would be all that I understand about science and logic so far would be the brain and the mind are equal to each other. There isn't duality here. I don't believe in duality, not even for a moment.
Oh, then, are they for at that point, like,
because you'd have to demonstrate you'd have to demonstrate that a mind exists without a brain somehow, or that the mind can survive the brain's death, which so far that's
my argument does, to some degree, it does demonstrate that, because
because an argument can't possibly demonstrate that a mind exists without a brain, because arguments aren't that kind of thing that can do that. Otherwise,
an argument isn't.
No, because the only way to get there would be to show it is the case, and that would require data.
No, that wouldn't require data. If the data would also have to apply to an argument, anyways. So,
well,
for example,
because your argument has to have something to back it up. Otherwise, it's going to have logical problems.
Well, yeah, Descartes' argument is that, for example, I'll just throw his in. I'm not going to stick on this topic, but Descartes' argument is that the body is divisible, aspects of the mind are indivisible, as in the ability to, I'll use shapes again just because it's easy.
Yeah.
The ability to conceptualize a triangle cannot be divorced from the ability to conceptualize a square.
Oh yeah, so, I mean, all of these things are
because the mind.
We have, what our brains can do is a wonderful thing, no doubt, and we can conceive of all sorts of things. But in the end, a logical argument is not in and of itself proof outside of logic. At any rate, make sure that that's very clear, because people get that wrong all the time. I can say, look, either my light's on or off. It's not on, so it's off. But in reality, I look around and go, hey, my light's on. Okay, my argument was sound, but reality said no to it. So then what? Well, the argument should lead us to investigate the conclusion if there was no fallacies in the argument. Now, if the argument has one or more fallacies in it, then the opposite should be true, in that the conclusion is one we're skeptical of. The conclusion could be true or it could be false. We're not really worried about it. We're like, look, go fix your argument, come back with one that works, and then I'll look into your thing, because it's a time saver. It's like, look, I don't have time to investigate every car salesman's claim. So give me a decent argument, and then I'll look into your claim. And if they can't do that first part, then I can save some steps and just go on to the next person to get a better argument. And when it comes to this particular argument, you have potential equivocation. You have, of course, association causation not being shown for the idea that anything has to be contained in a necessary mind, or even what the argument of a necessary mind is, or the argument of what a necessary mind is in and of itself. Then you have the problem that the conclusion doesn't follow, because it doesn't matter what you label something, that's not a proper conclusion. So you have non sequitur on top of everything else. So you have multiple fallacies in this particular argument as written. So you'd have to fix a lot of things for me to even investigate it. But of course, with the mind brain duality, you'd have to show somehow that the mind is separate from the brain in some way, shape, or form. And how are you even going to begin to hope to argue that?
There's a couple arguments, I guess. If you want the Descartes one, it's fine. Sure. I can go. It's only 2 lines. The first one is, all parts of the body are divisible from one another. Like even to the smallest degree, I can separate my one neuron from my other, so on and so forth. However, not all aspects of the mind are separable from each other. Therefore, if the mind possesses a quality that the brain does not have, then the mind and the brain are not the same thing.
What do you mean by mind in this? Or
Well, by mind, I mean your intellect, what you use to, your ability to think. You're a rational animal.
okay, so you're aware of studies that have been done on people with split hemispheres and people that have had spikes driven through their skulls.
I've seen the meme, man. It doesn't change the outcome of the argument, though.
No, it absolutely does, because personalities change, memories are lost. There's been more than one study with split hemispheres, and one I like is the one where the guy's left brain thinks that he's a theist, and the guy's right brain thinks it's a theist. So you have the atheist-theist split in the same guy's brain. You have two different distinct personalities because the brain has been separated and is no longer a single personality anymore. So
that doesn't change how that has.
Sure, it does, because
because my argument.
If I damage your brain, and pieces of your what you call mind stop being, then what is that other than I'm destroying your mind?
Yeah, I agree that the brain does, what's the word? I don't want to say affect it, but the brain and the mind aren't completely separate things, and that's not what my argument is.
Right.
My argument is that the mind does contain properties that the brain does not contain.
Like what?
I've already explained before. Parts of the mind are indivisible from each other.
What does that even mean, though?
It means that, for example, if you can conceptualize a triangle, you can conceptualize a square, and no matter how you split your brain, if you can do one, you can do the other.
No. If you took out the piece of your brain that could do one, you might separate it from the piece of the mind that can do the other. Are you a neurologist? Do you have studies that show that this is the case?
So there could be a person. I'm just saying hypothetically. Go ahead.
Right, but
So
I don't. The hypothetical doesn't. We would need, in order to support the assertions, we would now need a study based on neurology that showed that a piece of the brain taken apart could never make it so that you couldn't conceptualize a square and a triangle or whatever other thing that you want to make the claim about, because you would have to have the research to show that that's the case. Otherwise, you're making an unwarranted assertion without any support, and that's a formal fallacy, failure to give an argument.
No, my point is, if you can conceptualize a triangle and you can conceptualize a pentagon, what is preventing you from adding another side to the triangle, or getting rid of a side from the pentagon?
What's that matter? What are you trying to?
What I'm getting at is that you can't separate certain aspects of the mind from each other.
I still do not understand what you mean by that, because essentially the mind. What do you mean by mind in this case? What is that to you? What are you trying to say here? Because
it would be the intellect, where forms are stored. For example,
where in the brain is the form stored?
It's in the mind. It's in the intellect. I've said this before. It's in the intellect.
A function of the brain. So
the intellect is not a function of the brain.
Show that's true, then.
Show that it's false.
No, you have the burden of proof.
No, you do. So this is a back and forth. It's a back and forth.
Absolutely not. Here's why. Because we've already demonstrated that whatever memories and personality is alter when you damage the brain.
Yes, and I will admit that those are aspects. Fine, that's aspects of memory. Memory recollection is part of the brain. Yeah, sure. Okay. I have no argument.
What else is that? If you're no longer recognizable to anybody that knew you, are you even you at that point? No, I think you're something else. You know, if you have total amnesia, total memory wipe, and you don't know who you are, then the old you is dead. effectively.
No, the part of you that remains is it's what would be classically referred to as your nature, your form.
Yeah,
If you want to get theological, it's your
no, I don't. I
soul.
just want to know where that is. Where's that?
It's not it's not a physical object.
Then it doesn't exist.
No, what do you mean? You can't default to materialism just for the hell of it.
Well, if you can't show it, then where is it? If you have no proof of it, then there's no way to.
I've already explained that this is the point of this argument is to set up that.
But the point
immaterial
fails
things
because
exist.
But you haven't demonstrated that at all.
No, because your default is that immaterial things can't exist.
Well, if you want to prove they exist, then you must demonstrate that they exist.
But you're only all right. I'll give you an example. I'm a biology guy. I work with animals. I work with dead things. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say I was curious about neutron stars, and I wanted a physicist to tell me about them. But I was like, "Yo, hold on, guy! Don't give me any of that those equations or anything to describe like what they do. I need you to dissect one for me. That's the only way I can get evidence for it."
Mm-hmm.
If you set the barrier to a place that excludes what you're talking about, then there's no way. There's no way.
No,
to have a conversation.
there's still proof to be had. It's just I submit that you don't have it. You have an argument that has multiple logical fallacies, but an argument, and even one free of logical fallacies, is only proof inside of logic, not anywhere else.
So,
and you don't have one that's free of logical fallacies.
Are you saying that logic does not map to reality?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Well, then
I said that at best, if you had an argument that didn't have logical fallacies, which you don't, but that's okay because no theist has ever had one.
Okay,
but
if you, fine, yeah.
No, you simply don't.
I know. I mean, I meant continue with your point. My bad.
Yeah. That even if there was such an argument, then that would lead us to look into the conclusion further. But the problem is that every argument for theology has one or more logical fallacies. And one of those here is a failure to, well, it's actually formal fallacy. Forget informal fallacies, although those are important too. Is a formal fallacy, a failure to give an argument. In this case, you're saying this thing, this non-physicalness, exists in some intangible way. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, because you can think of things. Okay, well, yes, you can make up stuff in your head, but that still is constrained to the fact that you have a head in the first place. So you would have to demonstrate that the thing exists somehow without the mind to conceive of it. And it can't, it's like, okay, a door opens on its own and I say it's a ghost. Well, I have to demonstrate that a ghost is even a thing in the first place. And that's not being done here.
No, the point of the argument is that.
I know what the point is.
No. I will repeat it. I will repeat it because to be fair to it, that the universals, they do exist even without a mind to observe them, which you already granted. You said
sure.
However, these objects are mental objects because the mind can conceive them.
So?
Yes, all right, fine. But they would still exist even without our minds to conceive them.
Yeah.
Yes, and since they are mental objects, they must exist somewhere else.
I see. Okay, I see the problem. All right, here's the thing. Just because something is a mental object doesn't mean that it's look, the rule of gravity, the law of gravity, is still a thing whether or not there's any person, any intelligent entity to observe it, although humans are the only one we know about, so we'll leave it at humans. If there's no humans around, gravity is still a thing.
Hold on, a quick pause. No, sorry, no, this is a quick technical issue. Someone was saying that the video went cut out.
Did it? Video? We don't have. Where?
Yeah, hold on. You might want to restart it. No, not restart.
Are we here?
Can anyone, if you can see?
I didn't see anybody say that.
No, it was in. I'm on Discord right now.
Oh, well, I don't know anything about Discord, so
Yeah, I just refreshed it because I have it side tabbed and it's not showing. I'll put
uh,
in our chat.
I have no idea about any of that stuff. Um, let me know when you've got that sorted out. I guess that's where all these people are coming from. I'm like, I've got a lively chat for once. We'll get to questions in the chat in a moment, because I think this is where
No, I mean, I don't think anyone could hear us besides you and me right now.
no. Hey, Fishhead, can you hear me? Hey, Fishhead Salad, say lobsters if you can hear me in chat, because it says I'm still broadcasting. So,
Yeah, when I refresh the tab, it's not playing.
oh really? Well, that's not good. Hold
How do
on.
you know how to upload a image?
Error occurred. What the bleep? Hold on. Maybe I don't exist anymore.
Damn that. Yeah,
Well,
they only
there
it
goes
gets
the Red King's dream. Oh well, it was fun while it
yeah,
lasted.
that lasted an
Red
hour.
King woke up finally, I guess. Wow, well, YouTube's just not having
Dude,
it today.
YouTube is such garbage with their streams. It's impossible to
I
follow
don't
these.
know. Let's see if I close that, reopen that. Let's see. Maybe if I panic. Let's see if I refresh this, what happens.
Is it even recording still, or is it just the?
I have no idea. Let me refresh this and see if that
Yeah,
see
because
if that
I refreshed it and I'm only getting an error screen. Whoa, did he just cut out? Or?
all right. Let's see.
You back there, man?
Back. Let's see, because I had to refresh it, so closed. And
Error's still there.
wow, this is really they done now. Well, the universe doesn't want us to solve
Yeah,
to solve the problem of God or
the
not.
battle of the ages.
We were just about to come to a conclusion, and once you know it, everything failed us. Oh man. Wow, this has never happened.
Dude, our luck is terrible. What the fuck, man?
Let me stop this thing and see what happens if I do that. Let's see.